Hi guys, it's Tamara. I'm back with another video today. We're going to just go ahead and continue our conversation about the different kinds of abuse. I want to talk just a little bit about child abuse laws and kind of getting us moving towards abuse and trauma and narcissism and sociopathy that's connected to abuse. So we're gonna talk about that today. We're gonna pick and pull it a little bit apart, okay? So thank you so much for coming back to my channel. For those who are subscribed, and for those of you who are not subscribed, I encourage you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button over here. So then that way you can stick around with us as we talk about trauma for the next, actually after this week, it's going to be for the next 3 weeks. This is a 4-week series about trauma. And so we've been talking a lot about trauma and narcissism and sociopaths and multiple personality disorder. And then last week we talked a little bit about the different kinds of abuse. There's legal, financial, sexual, emotional, psychological, and physical. And today I just want to give you a little bit of background, talk a little bit about Pennsylvania's child abuse laws, and then give you just about a broad understanding of what child abuse is categorized as. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump in. The benefits for you today in this video is that you're going to learn just a little bit about how we conceptualize child abuse across the nation. And I also want to talk just a little bit about 2 different systems that most states tend to deal with. I feel like I'm blurred. Okay, there we go. Sorry guys, my camera goes in and out sometimes. So I'm sure that most of you are well aware of an agency known as CPS, Child Protective Services. Now, in the state of Pennsylvania and Ohio, there's 2 divisions, and in most states, there's 2 divisions, right? One division is children, youth, and families, or, sometimes just listed as Child Protective Services, and they deal with more of the legalized abuse, threatening angle of everything. And then you have the General Protective Services, which is sometimes known as social services or support services in certain states and counties. In Pennsylvania, it's regarded as General Protective Services, and that is the agency that focuses more on neglect, parenting that's permissive, and parents who do not have strict boundaries or rules and regulations. So I think it's important to know that there's 2 different systems. When we talk about child abuse, we're talking about a legal definition. And the legal definition of child abuse always includes the word intentional and affliction of harm to a child under the age of 18 years of age. The scary part is that a lot of child protective services or child protective service agencies, I should say, have a very hard time with identifying psychological and emotional abuse. When we talked about, and I'm going to put the video up here, when we talked about the different kinds of abuse, I think I said in that video that emotional and psychological abuse is the most difficult to prove because it's not anything that you can see a whelp from or a bruise from. It's not something that you can evaluate and examine like you could sexual abuse. It's not something that you can prove and link back to some kind of biological fluid or anything like that, right? Because in sexual abuse, there's usually DNA that you can look up, there's examinations that can be done. And physical abuse, there's marks and bruises and things like that, whelps. But with emotional and psychological abuse, it really is difficult to narrow down and try to figure out, well, how is this kid being abused? What's being said and done to this kid? The psychological manipulation and the narcissistic abuse is very, very difficult to prove. And so Child Protective Services, or Children, Youth, and Families, as it's known as in some areas, they have a very hard time with that. So they end up doing what's called an investigation, okay? And the investigation consists of somebody coming out to your home or to the child's home and interviewing the parents, interviewing the child, and any other informants like therapists, school teachers, neighbors, that kind of thing. They also go to the person who reported the abuse, right? So that could be a neighbor, that could be a teacher, that could be a stranger that just suspects that the child is being abused. Now, during that investigation, the parent or the caretaker is going to have this looming legal battle over their head. And what I mean by that is they're going to be under supervision. Child Protective Services may show up at the door unexpectedly. Child Protective Services may, knock on the door at any time. They might also send police or law enforcement if abuse is highly suspected. They may also pass the case on to law enforcement if it's a sexual abuse or child molestation case. So a lot of people can get pulled in once a report is made to Child Protective Services. Now, during that investigation, Child Protective Services is looking for any evidence that they can find to prove that the child is being abused, okay? When we're talking about narcissistic abuse, emotionally detached parents, permissive parenting, that is extraordinarily difficult to do. And so in those kind of cases, Child Protective Services may say, hey, look, you need to get into counseling, okay? If you're going to yell and scream at your kid, curse at your kid, call them all kind of names, you're going to need therapy for yourself. I've actually used that in some of my cases with families where when I see the kids being emotionally or psychologically abused by the parent, I say, look, I'm either going to report this to CYF because I'm a mandated reporter and I have to protect a child who doesn't have a voice, or you're going to go and get psychiatric treatment and I'm going to monitor it. Okay, that's usually the alternative that I give you, or that I give some of my clients when a child is being abused and harmed. I give you a fork in the road decision to make. Either way, you're going to make a decision or be sorry that you didn't, because a child that doesn't have a voice, they're going to feel abused and they're going to grow up with a lot of psychiatric and emotional problems, right? Okay, so that's Child Protective Services. During that investigation, again, you're going to have people in and out trying to figure out what's going on, talking to different people. If it comes down to a decision of, yes, you have abused the child, then it's going to go on your record. So anytime that someone pulls your background history or pulls a child abuse clearance, it's going to show up that you've been reported to CYF and the case has been concluded and ended, and the conclusion is that you are a child abuser. In that particular situation, the kids are going to automatically be removed from the home and placed either with a competent family member, or the next situation would be foster care. And then sometimes Child Protective Services will say, look, we're going to remove the kids, put them with a family member, and you're going to go get substance abuse treatment, mental health counseling. They give you a whole list of things that you need to do to make sure that the child is not abused. Okay, so then General Protective Services is over here, and that's the service that takes care of neglect, not being fed, not being clothed, going to school with inappropriate clothes on. And what I mean by that is like cleavage showing, or wearing shorts in the winter where there's snow on the ground, or wearing flip-flops where it's ice on the ground, that kind of neglect. Not being fed, right? Losing weight, being very bony and thin, locking kids up in cages, preventing them from coming out of their room, stripping their walls in their bedroom and taking everything out of their room, not keeping up their room, not vacuuming, allowing pets, thousands of pets, hundreds of pets, even 30 pets to live in the house and not clean up after them with kids in the home. Other neglect situations may include not allowing the child to get education, keeping the child home from school. All of those things will go under General Protective Services. And that means that Child Protective Services is going to be monitoring, but they're going to make sure that you get help. That because you're not intentionally trying to neglect the child, it's just that maybe you are a substance abuser, maybe you have a severe mental illness and you can't help what you're doing. I call that unintentional abuse. You're abusing your child and neglecting them, but you're doing it unintentionally because you have a problem, okay? So that's when General Protective Services gets involved, because they don't want to charge you as a criminal for abusing a child if you don't intend to abuse the child, right? Always remember that Child Protective Services is trying to figure out two things: whether you are intentionally abusing the child or you are unintentionally abusing the child. Okay, I'm going to put an article that I did in the description box a couple years ago about unintentional abuse, and I want to know what you guys think about that. Go ahead and post your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about unintentional abuse. That's a very controversial topic, that's for sure. All right, so in a case where there's General Protective Services that's needed, that's a situation where, you're just going to get hit with a bunch of resources, okay? You're going to need financial support, emotional support, psychological support. You're going to need support groups and counseling and pastoral help, right? Pastoral help? A pastor to help you, okay? So that's General Protective Services. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I want to give you guys a little bit of history. I want to give you some dates, and I want to give you some other information about child abuse and what that looks like, because I'm sure many of you, as you have contacted me behind the scenes through email, many of you can relate to this topic of child abuse. If you have been a victim of child abuse, let me know in the comment section below, and how did it affect you, because we are talking about trauma, so we are going to continue this conversation. All right, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm going to see you guys next week with the other half of this video. I want to make sure that I give you comprehensive and well-rounded information. If this video was helpful to you, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, please. And then if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Stick around with us as we continue our journey to understand trauma. All right, I'll see you guys really soon. Bye-bye.